So I think most of you would probably agree at this point that chapter 167 was completely bonkers. I mean, we got Saitama himself saying that he's going to let loose, and he damn well did, because we saw the insanity of the Sirius table flip destroying the entirety of the moon that they're on, and we saw a new Sirius move, the omnidirectional Sirius punch, I think it's called. And we saw Garou try his damnedest to overcome Saitama, and of course he's not been able to do it yet, and he probably won't. But that's not the topic of this video. What I wanted to talk about today is a thought that kind of occurred to me as I was thinking about chapter 167 and kind of going over all the events in my head. And a question that kind of popped up in my mind that I don't know why I didn't think of it in the first place is, how the hell are they going to get back to Earth once this fight's over? Because I mean, this fight's going to end eventually. Saitama's going to win, and obviously they're not just going to, pitch a tent and live on Jupiter after this point. So they got to get back somehow, right? So in today's video, I wanted to go ahead and talk about a couple possibilities on how they're going to be able to make it back to Earth once this fight concludes. This is Anime Anxiety, the channel where we talk all things anime and manga. So let's talk some manga today, shall we? So I'm kind of going to go over these possibilities from least likely to probably the most likely. And the first one I wanted to start with is a pretty interesting one. So there's some possibility that once this fight wraps up, if Garou ends up losing his God-given powers before they make it back to Earth, and he's not able to teleport them back, then they're going to be pretty thin on options on how to get back. So one thing that might happen is that, since Saitama at this point isn't even remotely bound by the laws of physics anymore, or maybe he never really was, we just never really saw the extent of it until this chapter, but he might just say screw it, grab Garou, somehow know the direction of Earth from where they are, and just take one enormous leap from the surface of Io straight to Earth. Now this sounds completely insane, and some of you guys might be, this sounds pretty stupid, but if you guys don't remember, we literally just saw Saitama kick a hyperspace gate, which is essentially a wormhole, like it was a soccer ball or something, just completely kicked it away. That stuff doesn't make any sense at all. So I don't think it'd be a far-fetched idea to think that, he'd be able to jump the millions of miles that they are from Earth and make it in one good jump. Or maybe, one Imrata kind of make a fun little thing where Saitama's jumping from like one moon to like another planet, just kind of like hopping his way to Earth. And this is when Saitama and Garou kind of have like their little talk where they kind of settle things, and Garou kind of just comes to amends with the fact that he's not going to be a monster and he's just going to live like a regular life, or, whatever his, the end of his arc kind of entails. Because they still kind of have to have that conversation. We saw that at the end of chapter 164. One Imrata originally intended for them to have like a little sit down before things got heated up again, but that kind of got pushed to the end because, a lot of fans were pretty upset that we're getting this weird finale to the fight, or what seemed like a finale to the fight, right? So yeah, I think that would be pretty cool. Saitama just grabbing Garou and they're just like hopping millions of miles at a time or thousands of miles at a time from planet or like asteroid to asteroid, getting their way back to Earth. Because at this point, I guess Saitama doesn't even need to breathe in space anymore. Either he's holding his breath super long, or he just doesn't need oxygen anymore. I don't know. Hopefully we get some kind of explanation to that. But honestly, I think that's kind of like should be the least of our concerns at this point. But moving on to the second possibility, which is, a little bit more likely, and it's that Saitama defeats Garou, and at the end of it, Garou is just like, all right, like, let's just go home, and he opens up a hyperspace gate, and they make it back to Earth. Now, the problem I kind of have with this is that I was always kind of under the assumption that once Saitama defeats Garou, he'll lose his, God-given powers as soon as that happens. Like, there'd be no reason for him to keep them or somehow still have them, because how is he going to lose them then after that point? Is like God going to confiscate them, and like we see with Homeless Emperor, but in that case he would die. And for those of you who read the webcomic, Garou doesn't die after this arc. He kind of goes like on a hiatus and stays low key and becomes Job Hunter Garou. But maybe he just kind of like transports them home after the fight, and once they get there, his powers run out, or he kind of just loses the will to get stronger or become a monster for a little bit, and that's when the powers kind of leave him. Or like, once Saitama defeats him, he uses like the last remnants of his powers before they die away to get them back home. Now this seems more likely, and I think it was kind of like a clever little thing for One and Murata to give Garou these dimension shifting powers, because if they kind of planned ahead and said, okay, they're going to fight on this moon in front of Jupiter, we have to make a way for them to come back home, and this was kind of what they thought of, which I think would be pretty cool, you know, really good planning on their part, right? I'd kind of be more excited with the idea of them like planet hopping for a chapter or two, but nonetheless, it's more likely that this is going to happen. Now, the third and probably most likely possibility, and I'm sure it's something that you guys have already come up with at this point, is that once their fight is over, Blast is going to pull up and see, wow, like look at all the damage here, like look what you guys did, you know, this is insane. And once he sees that the fight is over and Garou isn't really like a threat anymore, he's going to take both of them and just open his own hyperspace gate and take them back to Earth. Now, like my main thing with this is that like if Garou loses his powers and the only way they can get back is through Blast taking them back, then how is Garou going to survive the atmosphere before that happens, you know? Because he's going to be a regular human again, and of course a regular human can't handle the conditions on a moon orbiting Jupiter, right? So I find it kind of hard to believe that Garou is going to not have any more powers for a short period of time before Blast shows up and takes them back home. So I hope there's kind of like a good way to explain that, or kind of just like find a little loophole to it so that can make a little bit more sense. But at the same time, while I'm thinking this stuff, like I think, you know, this is One Punch Man where we just saw Saitama kicking wormholes away and moving so fast that it literally looks like there's like 20 of him at once, like leaving all these after images. So it's kind of an exercise in futility at this point, trying to dissect the logistics of all these little things. So that's why I think this is probably the most likely thing that's going to occur to take them back home. But what do you guys think? How do you think they're going to make it back home once this fight's over? Do you agree with one of the possibilities I just laid out, or do you have something better for me that you can leave in the comments? Because I'm all ears. Let's have a conversation here. I love how involved you guys are in the comment sections of these videos. You guys come up with some really awesome ideas and theories to talk about. So I think I'm going to start doing some Q&As like once a week or something like that, because I am very interested in what you guys have to say, and it kind of helps me think of like new ideas and new perspectives on things. So yeah, let me know in the comments too if you guys want me to start doing some Q&A type stuff. But if you enjoyed this video, please like, please subscribe, and turn some notifications on. I do post One Punch Man content pretty regularly, so I'll have you covered on that front. But until next time, I'll see you guys later.